The alien princess shocked as her eyes locked onto the man standing at the far end of the grand hall. Her breath hitched, and the delicate glass goblet she held trembled slightly in her hand. The ornate walls of the palace faded into the background, the vibrant sounds of the great conclave dulled, as if the universe itself held its breath. She couldn't believe it, yet the face before her was unmistakable. He was human, a rare sight in the court of Zephyra. His dark hair framed a face that was both rugged and gentle, his sharp jawline softened by the warmth in his deep-set eyes. He stood among the other dignitaries, unaware of the gaze that had fallen upon him, engaged in a conversation with a group of traders from the outer worlds. The princess felt a rush of memories flood her mind, taking her back to the harrowing days of her childhood. She had been no more than 7 rotations old when the invasion happened, the day her peaceful world was engulfed in chaos. Flames and destruction had consumed her home, her family scattered. She had been trapped, frightened, and helpless, when a small figure, barely older than herself, had appeared from the smoke. A human boy. He had risked everything to pull her from the wreckage, to shield her from the chaos, guiding her to a hidden alcove where she would be safe until help arrived. That boy had saved her life. And now, standing mere steps away, was the man he had become. Her heart pounded as the realization settled in. How had he found his way here, to Zephyra, after all these years? Did he remember her as she remembered him? Summoning her courage, the princess set down her goblet and began to weave through the crowd, her elegant robes brushing softly against the marble floor. Her pulse raced, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She had dreamed of this moment, fantasized about finding the one who had been her savior, and now that he was here, she found herself unsure of what to say. As she approached, the man's gaze lifted, and their eyes met. Recognition flickered across his face, a mixture of surprise and something deeper, something unspoken. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice steady yet tinged with awe. It's you." Lyra's lips parted, her voice barely a whisper. "You remember me. How could I forget?" John's eyes softened as he took a step closer. "I've thought about that day more times than I can count. I never imagined I'd see you again." Lyra's hand instinctively reached for his, the connection immediate and powerful. "You saved my life," she said, her voice filled with gratitude and wonder. "All these years, I've carried the memory of you, my unknown hero." John's grip tightened gently around her hand. "I did what anyone would do," he replied, though the intensity in his eyes suggested otherwise. "But seeing you here now, it feels like fate." Their reunion was a moment suspended in time, surrounded by the swirling grandeur of the conclave, yet entirely their own. The world around them might as well have disappeared, leaving only the shared history and the undeniable bond that had never truly broken. As the reality of the present settled in, Lyra knew their journey together was only beginning. The past had brought them together once more, but it was the future that now lay before them, a future they would navigate side by side, as two souls reunited by destiny and bound by a childhood act of courage that had changed both their lives forever. John looked around the grand hall, still taking in the opulence of the Zephyran palace. "This place," he said, his voice quiet but filled with awe, "it's like something out of a dream." Lyra smiled, though her thoughts were still racing. "It's my home, though it hasn't always felt like one. Especially after—" Her voice trailed off as memories of the invasion surfaced. John nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I'm sorry for what happened to your world," he said softly. "I was just a kid, but I remember how terrifying it was." Lyra squeezed his hand, grateful for his empathy. "You were just a child, yet you showed more bravery than most adults that day. You gave me hope when everything seemed lost." John looked into her eyes, his expression sincere. "I did what I could, but I always wondered what became of you. It's incredible to see you again, to know you're safe." A silence fell between them, not awkward but filled with unspoken emotions. The air seemed to hum with the energy of their reunion, a connection that had transcended time and distance. Finally, Lyra spoke, her voice steady. "Come with me. There's so much we need to talk about, and this is not the place." John nodded, trusting her instinctively. "Lead the way." She guided him through the intricate corridors of the palace, their footsteps echoing softly against the polished stone. The distant sounds of the conclave faded as they moved deeper into the private wing, away from the prying eyes of the galaxy's elite. They entered a quiet chamber adorned with flowing drapes and soft lighting. It was a sanctuary, a place where Lyra often came to find solace. She gestured for John to sit on one of the plush cushions by the window, where the twin moons cast a gentle glow. Once they were seated, Lyra took a deep breath. "Tell me," she said, her eyes searching his face. "How did you come to be here, in Zephyra? After all these years?" John leaned back, his gaze drifting to the moons outside. "It's a long story, but I'll try to give you the short version," he began. "After the invasion, I was taken in by a group of traders who found me wandering the ruins. They raised me, taught me about the stars and the worlds beyond Earth. Eventually, I started working with them, traveling across the galaxy." He paused, his brow furrowing slightly. "But I never stopped thinking about you, about that day. I always hoped I'd find my way back to your world, though I never expected it to be like this." Lyra listened intently, her heart swelling with gratitude. "And now you're here, at the conclave. Are you representing the traders?" John shook his head. "Not exactly. I've been working as an independent envoy, helping to mediate disputes between different factions. When I heard about the conclave, I knew it was a chance to make a difference. I didn't know I'd find you here." Lyra's eyes softened, and she reached out to touch his hand again. "You've done more than make a difference, John. You've changed my life twice now. I'm so glad you're here." John turned his hand to intertwine his fingers with hers. "And I'm glad I found you, Lyra. I feel like I've finally come full circle." They sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of their reunion. The past had brought them back together, but the future held countless possibilities, challenges and adventures they could face side by side. Lyra's mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. There was so much she wanted to share with John, so many questions she had about his life and experiences. But for now, she was content to simply be with him, to bask in the comfort of their rekindled bond. As the night deepened, the twin moons continued their journey across the sky, casting their light over the two figures seated by the window, bound by fate and the unbreakable thread of a shared past. The quiet hum of the palace enveloped them, allowing the weight of their reunion to sink in. For a moment, they simply sat, fingers intertwined, lost in the quiet wonder of their unexpected meeting. Lyra could feel the questions bubbling just beneath the surface, questions about John's life, his travels, and the experiences that had shaped him since they last parted. Breaking the silence, Lyra spoke softly, her voice filled with curiosity. "You've seen so much of the galaxy, haven't you? What's it like out there, beyond the borders of Zephyra?" John smiled, a hint of wistfulness in his eyes. "It's vast and diverse. Every world has its own rhythm, its own way of life. Some places are breathtakingly beautiful, while others are harsh and unforgiving. But each one has its own story, its own struggles and triumphs." He glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "And through it all, I carried the memory of you. It kept me grounded, gave me purpose." Lyra's heart swelled at his words, the sincerity in his voice resonating deeply within her. "And now that you're here," she said, "what do you want to do? What's next for you?" John considered her question for a moment before answering. "I came here to help, to offer my skills as a mediator. But now that I've found you, I feel like my purpose has shifted. I want to be by your side, to support you in any way I can." Lyra felt a surge of gratitude and warmth at his words. "Your presence alone is a gift, John. But I should warn you, life here isn't as peaceful as it may seem. The conclave is a gathering of allies and rivals alike, and tensions run deep beneath the surface." John's expression grew serious. "I'm no stranger to conflict. If there's anything I can do to help, I will." The determination in his voice reassured her. "Your skills as a mediator could be invaluable," she said. "There are factions within the conclave that have been at odds for generations. Perhaps, with your help, we can find a way to bridge those divides." John nodded, his resolve firm. "I'll do everything in my power to help. And if it means staying here, with you, then that's exactly where I want to be." Lyra smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. Then we face the future together, as partners. John returned her smile, the connection between them stronger than ever. Together, he agreed. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, they knew their journey was just beginning. The challenges ahead were daunting, but they would face them side by side, bound by the past and driven by the promise of a brighter future. And in that quiet chamber, as the world outside stirred to life, they found solace in each other, ready to navigate the complexities of their destinies, united by the strength of their rediscovered bond. The soft glow of dawn filtered through the translucent curtains, casting a warm light over the room. Lyra and John sat together, watching the twin suns rise above the horizon. The tranquility of the moment contrasted sharply with the challenges they both knew lay ahead. Lyra broke the silence, her voice thoughtful. The conclave is more than just a gathering of diplomats and leaders. It's a delicate dance of power, alliances, and hidden agendas. Each faction comes with its own grievances and ambitions, and managing them requires finesse. John nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. I've seen my share of political intrigue during my travels. Different cultures, different stakes, but the core of it remains the same, finding common ground amidst the chaos. Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with both hope and concern. Your insight could be exactly what we need. There's been growing unrest among the outer colonies, and their representatives are pushing for greater autonomy. Meanwhile, some of the core worlds are resistant to change, fearing a loss of influence. John leaned forward, his brow furrowed in thought. It sounds like a classic struggle for balance. The colonies want their voices heard, while the core worlds cling to their power. We need to find a way to show both sides that compromise can benefit everyone. Lyra sighed, the weight of leadership pressing heavily on her shoulders. It's easier said than done. The council is deeply divided, and trust is scarce. Some see any concession as a sign of weakness. John reached out, placing his hand over hers. Then we'll work on building that trust. Step by step, conversation by conversation. Sometimes, it's the small victories that pave the way for larger ones. Lyra squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his presence. I've spent my life preparing for this role, but it feels like I've been fighting an uphill battle every day. Having you here, it makes me feel like I'm not alone in this. You're not alone, John assured her, his voice firm yet gentle. We'll face this together, and we'll find a way to bring the factions closer to understanding each other. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime at the door. Lyra stood, smoothing the folds of her gown. That will be my advisor. We have a session of the council starting soon. John rose as well, his expression resolute. Then let's face it head-on. I'm ready to help in any way I can. Lyra nodded, grateful for his support. Follow me. It's time to introduce you to the conclave. As they made their way through the palace halls, Lyra felt a renewed sense of purpose. With John by her side, she believed they could navigate the intricacies of galactic politics and bring about meaningful change. The path ahead was uncertain, but together they were stronger, ready to face the challenges of the conclave and beyond. The Grand Council chamber of the Zephyrin Palace was a vast, circular room, its walls lined with intricate carvings that depicted the history of the galaxy's most significant events. At its center stood a raised platform where Lyra, as the host and a key figure of the conclave, would preside. The chamber buzzed with the low hum of conversations as delegates from various worlds took their seats, their expressions ranging from cautious curiosity to open skepticism. John followed Lyra into the chamber, his presence immediately drawing attention. The sight of a human among the gathered dignitaries was unusual, and whispers spread quickly. Lyra, sensing the tension, paused at the edge of the platform, turning to address the assembly. Esteemed delegates, she began, her voice calm yet commanding, I thank you all for gathering here today as we continue our efforts toward peace and cooperation. Before we proceed, allow me to introduce someone who has recently arrived and whose unique perspective may offer valuable insights. She gestured toward John, who stepped forward with a respectful nod. This is John, a mediator with extensive experience in resolving conflicts across various worlds. His presence here is not only a symbol of unity but also an opportunity for us to learn from his knowledge. There was a moment of silence as the delegates absorbed her words. Then, a tall, stern-looking man from the core world stood, his voice cutting through the quiet. "With all due respect, Princess Lyra, why should we trust the input of an outsider, especially one from a world that has long been isolated from our affairs?" John met the man's gaze, his tone measured and respectful. "I understand your concern," he said. "Trust is not given lightly, especially in matters as important as these. But I have spent my life navigating the complexities of interstellar relations, and I believe that fresh perspectives can often illuminate paths that those entrenched in their own conflicts might overlook." Another delegate, a woman from the outer colonies, spoke up, her voice laced with curiosity. "And what would you suggest, mediator, for resolving the tensions between the colonies and the core worlds? We've been at an impasse for far too long." John took a moment to gather his thoughts, the weight of the room's expectations heavy on his shoulders. "The first step is dialogue," he began. "Not just the formal kind, but genuine conversations where each side listens with the intent to understand, not merely to respond. We need to identify common goals that both sides can agree upon, even if they're small. From there, we can build trust." His words hung in the air, the chamber filled with a thoughtful silence. Lyra watched the faces of the delegates, noting the flickers of interest and the softening of resistance. She knew that trust would not be won in a single meeting, but John's calm demeanor and thoughtful approach were already making an impact. The stern man from the core worlds, though still skeptical, inclined his head slightly. "We are willing to listen, John, if your words can lead us to a place where we can coexist peacefully." John nodded, his resolve unwavering. "Then let's begin. Together, we can find a path forward." Lyra felt a swell of pride and hope as she looked at John. The road ahead was long and fraught with challenges, but with allies like him, she believed they could make a difference. As the discussions continued, the first seeds of understanding were sown, marking the beginning of what could be a new chapter for the Conclave and the galaxy. As the discussions progressed, it became clear that not all delegates were receptive to compromise. Beneath the surface of diplomacy, hidden agendas and old rivalries simmered. Lyra and John knew they were walking a tightrope, but they hadn't anticipated how quickly the tensions would escalate. Later that evening, Lyra invited John to a private meeting in her chambers, joined by a few trusted advisors. The mood was somber as they recounted the day's events. "The factions are more divided than we realized," said Alara, Lyra's chief advisor, her voice tinged with worry. "Some of the core world's representatives are not interested in compromise. They're consolidating power, and there are rumors of a shadow alliance forming." Lyra frowned, her mind racing. "A shadow alliance? If that's true, it could destabilize everything we've worked for. We need proof." John leaned forward, his expression serious. "I can help with that. In my time as a mediator, I've dealt with covert groups before. If we can uncover who's behind this alliance, we might be able to stop it before it gains traction." Alara nodded. "We'll need someone to infiltrate their ranks or intercept their communications. It's a dangerous task." John met Lyra's gaze, his determination evident. "I'll do it. I can blend in, gather information, and report back. But I'll need to work discreetly, without drawing attention." Lyra's heart tightened at the thought of John putting himself in danger, but she knew his skills were invaluable. "Are you sure? This isn't just a diplomatic mission. It could be life-threatening." "I'm sure," John replied, his tone resolute. "If it means preventing a war, it's worth the risk." Alara quickly devised a plan, outlining the steps they needed to take. "We'll arrange for John to attend a series of informal gatherings where these factions often convene. With the right cover, he can gain their trust and learn more about their intentions." The following days were tense as John prepared for his mission. Lyra found herself constantly on edge, her concern for him growing with each passing moment. They spent every spare minute together, their bond deepening as they faced the looming threat. Finally, the night of the first gathering arrived. Dressed in the garb of a neutral trader, John slipped into the crowd, his demeanor relaxed but alert. The room buzzed with whispered conversations, and John carefully navigated the social intricacies, listening for clues. It wasn't long before he overheard fragments of a plan, hints of a larger scheme that went beyond mere political posturing. Phrases like divide and conquer and seize control sent chills down his spine. One of the men, a powerful figure from the core worlds, spoke in hushed tones to his associates. The princess is too naive, too trusting. If we move quickly, we can dismantle the conclave and establish a new order. John's pulse quickened. He had to get this information back to Lyra, but he couldn't afford to blow his cover. Carefully, he excused himself from the group, blending into the crowd as he made his way toward the exit. But just as he thought he was safe, a hand clamped down on his shoulder. Turning slowly, he found himself face to face with one of the conspirators. The man's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering in his gaze. "Leaving so soon?" the man asked, his tone casual but edged with danger. John forced a smile, masking his nerves. "Just stepping out for some air. It's a bit stuffy in here." The man didn't release his grip. "Funny, you seem awfully interested in our little discussions. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private." John's mind raced. He needed to think fast. "I'm just a trader," he said, feigning innocence. "But if there's a business opportunity here, I'd love to know more." The man's grip loosened slightly, though his gaze remained wary. "Perhaps we can find a way to collaborate. But let's keep it discreet." John nodded, relieved but still on high alert. "Of course. Lead the way." As they moved toward a more secluded part of the building, John knew he was walking a fine line. He needed to stay close enough to gather more information, but not so close that he became a liability. The stakes had just been raised, and the game was far more dangerous than he had anticipated. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Lyra waited anxiously for John's return, unaware of the perilous situation unfolding. She could only hope that he would come back safe, and with the information they desperately needed to prevent the Shadow Alliance from tearing the conclave apart. John followed the man into a dimly lit corridor, the tension thick in the air. His mind was a whirlwind of strategies, each one carrying the weight of potential discovery or worse. The man led him into a private room, its walls adorned with opulent decorations that contrasted sharply with the sinister undertones of their meeting. "Sit," the man commanded, gesturing to a chair. John complied, keeping his expression neutral. "You're not just a trader, are you?" The man's eyes bore into John, his suspicion growing. "You've been asking questions, listening too closely. Who sent you?" John took a steadying breath, his mind scrambling for a plausible story. "I'm a trader," he said evenly, "but I also work as an information broker. I found that knowing the right things about the right people can be profitable." The man's eyes narrowed, considering John's words. "Information broker, huh? And what have you learned tonight that's so valuable?" John leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "I've learned that there's a group ready to shift the balance of power. That kind of information could be worth a fortune to the right buyer, or a threat to the wrong one." A slow smile spread across the man's face, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You're bold, I'll give you that. But boldness can be dangerous. You need to be very careful about who you share that information with." John met the man's gaze, his own expression hardening. "I'm aware of the risks. But I also know that alliances built on secrets are fragile. The wrong word in the wrong ear, and everything could come crashing down." The man chuckled, though there was no humor in it. "You're playing a dangerous game, my friend. But perhaps there's a place for someone like you in our circle, if you prove your loyalty." John felt a flicker of relief. He had bought himself some time. "Loyalty is earned," he said smoothly. "Tell me what you need, and I'll show you where my loyalties lie." The man nodded, satisfied for now. "We'll see. For now, keep your ears open and your mouth shut. There's a lot more to learn before we trust you." John nodded, the tension in his body easing slightly. "Understood." As the man led him back to the main gathering, John's mind was already working on how to relay this new information to Lyra without blowing his cover. He knew the longer he stayed, the more dangerous it became. Back at the palace, Lyra paced her chambers, her worry mounting with each passing minute. She trusted John's abilities, but the risks he was taking weighed heavily on her heart. When the door finally opened, and John stepped inside, her relief was palpable. "John," she whispered, rushing to him. "What happened? Are you okay?" John nodded, his expression serious but calm. "I'm fine, But we have a problem. The Shadow Alliance is real, and they're planning to dismantle the Conclave from within. Lyra's eyes widened, the gravity of his words sinking in. Did you find out who's involved? Not yet, but I'm in, John said. They think I'm an information broker looking to sell secrets. It's risky, but it's the best way to get close to them. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. We need to act quickly. If they're planning something this big, we can't afford to wait. John took her hands in his grip firm. We'll stop them, Lyra. Together, we'll expose their plans and protect the Conclave. But we need to move carefully. One wrong step, and it could all fall apart. Lyra nodded, her resolve hardening. Then we'll do whatever it takes. The future of our worlds depends on it. As they stood together, the weight of their mission settled over them. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but they were united in their determination to protect the fragile piece of the galaxy. And they knew that, no matter the cost, they would face whatever came together. In that moment, the weight of the galaxy seemed to lift, and all that mattered was the quiet strength they had found in each other. The future was still uncertain, but they knew that whatever came next, they would face it side by side. And so, as the stars sparkled above them, they embraced the peaceful silence of the night, knowing they had not only saved the Conclave but had also found a future filled with hope and possibility, together.